This is the entire story of Mark Zuckerberg you can fall asleep to. Our story begins in a small town with a boy who would one day change how the world connects. Let's drift into the early years of Mark Zuckerberg, a tale of curiosity, code, and the seeds of something extraordinary. A quiet start, early life and Harvard years, childhood in Dobbs Ferry, New York. In the sleepy town of Dobbs Ferry, New York, nestled along the Hudson River, Mark Elliott Zuckerberg was born on May 14, 1984. The town was a postcard of suburban life, tree-lined streets, modest homes, and a close-knit community where neighbors knew each other's names. Mark grew up in a family that was both ordinary and quietly ambitious. His father, Edward Zuckerberg, was a dentist who ran his practice from a home office, the sound of dental drills occasionally drifting through the house. His mother, Karen, was a psychiatrist before she focused on raising Mark and his three sisters, Randy, Donna, and Ariel. The Zuckerbergs were a tight unit, grounded in middle-class values, with an emphasis on education and hard work. Mark was the only boy, the second of four children, and from an early age he stood out not for being loud or flashy, but for his intense curiosity. His mind seemed to hum like a computer processor, always seeking the next puzzle to solve. By the time he was 6, the world of technology was already calling. It was the late 1980s, and personal computers were just beginning to creep into homes. Edward Zuckerberg brought home an Atari 800, a clunky machine by today's standards, but to young Mark, it was a portal to another world. He'd sit for hours tinkering with basic programming, teaching himself how to make the machine obey his commands. His father noticed this spark and encouraged it, showing Mark how to write simple programs. One early creation was a messaging system for the dental office, dubbed ZuckNet, which let the receptionist and Edward communicate across the house. It was primitive, but it worked a glimpse of the connectivity Mark would later champion. The Zuckerberg household was filled with books and ideas. Dinner conversations often veered into science, technology, or psychology, reflecting his parents' professions. Mark absorbed it all, but computers were his true love. He wasn't just playing games like other kids. He was building them. By middle school, he was coding small games for fun, sharing them with friends who marveled at his skill. His parents, recognizing his talent, hired a private tutor, David Newman, to teach Mark advanced programming. Every week, David would come to the house, guiding Mark through languages like C++ and Java. Mark soaked it up, his mind racing ahead, always asking for more complex challenges. Outside of coding, he was a typical kid in some ways, playing video games, fencing in his spare time, and quoting lines from Star Wars. But even then, there was a quiet intensity to him, a sense that he was destined for something bigger than Dobbs Ferry could hold. School wasn't always a perfect fit for Mark. He was bright, almost too bright. Sometimes bored by the pace of traditional learning. Teachers noted his knack for math and science, but he wasn't a show-off. He was reserved, almost shy, with a mop of curly brown hair and a quick, lopsided grin. His childhood friends recall a kid who was loyal but didn't need the spotlight. He was happiest when solving problems, whether it was a math equation or a glitch in his latest program. By the time he was a teenager, Mark's fascination with computers had deepened into an obsession. He wasn't just following instructions, he was creating systems, laying the groundwork for a mindset that would one day birth a global platform. As the millennium approached, Mark's world was about to expand beyond the Hudson River, toward a place where his talents would truly take root. Let's follow that path now to a prestigious academy where a young coder began to make his mark. High school days. At Phillips Exeter Academy, a boarding school in New Hampshire known for its rigorous academics and Ivy-covered prestige, Mark Zuckerberg arrived in 2000 as a sophomore. Exeter was a world away from Dobbs Ferry, a sprawling campus of red brick buildings where students debated philosophy in oak-paneled rooms and prepared for Ivy League futures. Mark, still the quiet kid with a knack for tech, blended in but didn't quite conform. His uniform might have been a blazer and tie, but his mind was always in code, his fingers itching to get back to a keyboard. Exeter challenged Mark in ways Dobbs Ferry hadn't. The school's Harkness method, round-table discussions where students drove the conversation, forced him to articulate his ideas. He excelled in math and science, but he also took a shine to classics, memorizing Latin texts and quoting Homer. Fencing remained a hobby, and he captained the team, his wiry frame darting across the strip with a calculated precision. But it was in the computer lab where Mark truly came alive. Exeter had state-of-the-art facilities for the time, and Mark spent countless hours there, his focus unwavering. Classmates noticed he wasn't like other tech enthusiasts. He wasn't just tinkering, he was building things that worked. One of his most notable creations during this time was Synapse, a music software he developed with his friend Adam Niangelo. Synapse was a media player that used early machine learning to study a user's listening habits and suggest songs, a precursor to modern recommendation algorithms like those on Spotify. Mark and Adam coded it during their senior year, fueled by late-night pizza and teenage ambition. When they released Synapse online as freeware, it went viral in its own small way, racking up thousands of downloads. Tech blogs buzzed about it, and companies like Microsoft and AOL came knocking, offering six-figure sums to buy the software or hire the duo. Mark, just 17, turned them down. He wasn't interested in cashing out. He wanted to keep creating to see how far his ideas could go. Synapse was a proof of concept, a sign that Mark could build something the world wanted, even if he didn't yet know what that something would be. Exeter polished Mark's edges, but didn't change his core. He was still the kid who'd rather debug code than chase popularity. His classmates respected him, though some found him distant, his mind always half in a digital world. By the time he graduated in 2002, he'd left a quiet but unmistakable mark on the school. College applications loomed, and Mark set his sights on Harvard not just for its prestige, but for the opportunity to dive deeper into the intersection of technology and human behavior. As he packed his bags for Cambridge, Massachusetts, the future was calling, soft but insistent, like a whisper in the night. Now let's drift into those crimson halls where a new chapter of Mark's life began to unfold. Harvard life begins. In the fall of 2002, Mark Zuckerberg stepped onto Harvard's campus, a freshman among thousands in a sea of red brick and ambition. Harvard was a crucible of ideas, where future presidents, CEOs, and scholars roamed the yard, their footsteps echoing with purpose. Mark, still wiry with that mop of curls, blended into the crowd but carried an energy that set him apart. He enrolled as a psychology and computer science major, a combination that hinted at his fascination with how people think and how systems work. Psychology gave him insight into human behavior. Computer science gave him the tools to shape it. Mark lived in Kirkland House, a dorm that would later become famous as the birthplace of something monumental. His early days were typical of a Harvard freshman late-night study sessions, dining hall trays piled high, and navigating the social maze of a new place. He wasn't a social butterfly, but he wasn't a loner either. He made friends quickly, gravitating toward those who shared his curiosity and drive. Dustin Moskovitz, a fellow coder with a practical streak, became a close ally. Chris Hughes, thoughtful and articulate, brought a different perspective. Eduardo Saverin, a business-minded Brazilian-American, rounded out the group. They'd hang out in dorm rooms, debating ideas over pizza, their laughter spilling into the halls. Mark's reputation grew quietly. He was the guy who could fix your computer or whip up a program in an afternoon, always with a sly grin and a quip. Classes were a mixed bag. Psychology fascinated him, especially courses on how people form connections and share information. Computer science was his playground. He aced coding assignments with ease, often finishing them faster than his peers. Professors noticed his talent, but Mark wasn't one to linger in lecture halls. He preferred the computer lab, where he could experiment without boundaries. He built small projects, a study tool here, a game there, each one a stepping stone, honing his ability to turn ideas into reality. His friends saw him as brilliant but unpolished, his mind always racing ahead of his words. He'd talk about connecting people, even then, a phrase that sounded vague but carried a spark of vision. Socially, Mark was finding his place. He joined Alpha Epsilon Pi, a Jewish fraternity, and attended parties, though he was more observer than life of the party. He dated Priscilla Chan, a fellow student who'd later become his wife, her grounded presence a counterpoint to his restless energy. To some, Mark seemed awkward, his humor dry, and his focus intense. But to those who knew him, he was loyal, funny, and fiercely dedicated to his craft. Harvard was shaping him, but he was already shaping something else, something that would start in a dorm room late at night with the glow of a laptop screen. As the fall of 2003 approached, Mark's fingers were poised over the keyboard, ready to code a future no one could yet imagine. Birth of FaceMash. It was the fall of 2003, and Mark Zuckerberg, a sophomore at Harvard, was restless. The air in his Kirkland House dorm room was thick with the hum of possibility, or maybe just the hum of his computer fan. One October night, after a long day of classes and a bit of social sting from a recent romantic fumble, Mark cracked open a few beers and let his fingers dance across the keyboard. He wasn't setting out to change the world. He was just chasing a spark, a way to blow off steam. What emerged from that late-night coding session was FaceMash, a website that would become a fleeting scandal and a quiet prelude to something much bigger. FaceMash was simple, almost crude. Mark hacked into Harvard's online dorm directories, scraping photos of students, men and women, smiling or serious, unaware they'd become part of his experiment. He wrote a program to pair these photos side by side, inviting users to vote on who was hotter. It was a game, a prank born of boredom and bravado, fueled by the kind of impulsive genius that thrives at 2 a.m. Mark launched the site on a Sunday night, emailing a few friends to check it out. By morning, FaceMash had spread like wildfire across campus. Students clicked, compared, and laughed, passing the link through instant messages and dorm room chatter. In less than a day, the site racked up thousands of views, servers straining under the traffic. For a moment, Mark's creation was the talk of Harvard. But the laughter didn't last. By Monday, outrage began to bubble. Students, especially women, felt violated. Their photos used without consent, reduced to objects in a digital beauty contest. Emails flooded the Harvard administration, and FaceMash was shut down within days. The backlash was swift and fierce. The Harvard Crimson, the campus newspaper, published scathing editorials accusing Mark of breaching privacy and ethics. Words like misogyny and irresponsibility swirled around him. Mark, caught off guard by the reaction, issued a public apology, admitting the site was a mistake. He hadn't meant to offend, he said. It was just a coding exercise gone awry. Privately, he was shaken but defiant, believing the uproar was overblown. The university didn't let it slide. Mark faced a disciplinary hearing before Harvard's administrative board, a somber affair where deans weighed his fate. Charges of hacking, privacy violations, and misconduct hung in the air. He could have been expelled, his Harvard dream cut short. But Mark's earnest apology and his reputation as a brilliant, if impulsive student worked in his favor. In the end, he received a slap on the wrist probation and a warning to respect university rules. The ordeal left a mark, not on his record, but on his mindset. Face Mash was a lesson in consequences, in the power of code to ripple beyond a dorm room. Yet it also showed Mark something else. People crave connection, even in a flawed, fleeting form. As the dust settled, he turned his gaze to a new idea, one that would harness that craving without the sting. Now let's drift to a colder night a few months later, when a new website flickered to life. The beginning of the Facebook. On a chilly February evening in 2004, Mark Zuckerberg sat in his Kirkland House dorm, the glow of his laptop casting shadows on the walls. The Face Mash fiasco was behind him, but its lessons lingered. He'd been mulling over a new project, one inspired by Harvard's paper Facebook's directories of student photos and bios, and by the way, people shared snippets of their lives online. What if there was a digital version, a place where students could connect, share, and belong? With his friend's encouragement, Mark began coding. Over a few weeks, fueled by Red Bull and late-night focus, he built a website called thefacebook.com. It was clean, simple, blew a virtual space for Harvard students to create profiles, list their interests, and link to friends. On February 4th, 2004, Mark hit launch. The Facebook went live, accessible only to those with a harvard.edu email address. He sent the link to a few friends who sent it to theirs. Within hours, students were signing up, uploading photos, and poking around the site's features. Profiles were basic name, dorm, major, favorite books, relationship status, but they felt personal. A digital reflection of campus life. By the end of the first day, over 1,000 students had joined. By the end of the week, nearly half of Harvard's undergraduates were on the Facebook. The site wasn't flashy, but it was intuitive, addictive. Students stayed up late, browsing profiles, messaging friends, and discovering connections. It was as if Mark had bottled the buzz of a dorm lounge and set it free online. The Facebook's success wasn't Mark's alone. His roommates and collaborators played crucial roles, each bringing something unique to the table. Dustin Moskovitz, a pragmatic coder with a knack for efficiency, jumped in to help scale the site's infrastructure. As traffic surged, Dustin worked alongside Mark to keep the servers running, tweaking code to handle the load. Eduardo Saverin, the business-minded friend with a flair for strategy, became the site's first CFO. Eduardo invested $1,000 of his own money to cover server costs and began pitching the Facebook to potential advertisers. His vision was to monetize the site early, laying the groundwork for a real company. Chris Hughes, with his knack for communication, helped shape the site's user experience, suggesting features to make it more engaging. Andrew McCollum, another friend, contributed design elements, including the site's early logo. Together, they were a scrappy team, driven by excitement and the thrill of building something people loved. Word of the Facebook spread beyond Kirkland House. Students clamored for access, and soon Mark and his team expanded the site to other Ivy League schools, Yale, Columbia, Stanford. Each launch brought a new wave of users, the site's simplicity proving universal. Media outlets took notice. The Harvard Crimson ran a story calling the Facebook a campus phenomenon. But with growth came tension. Eduardo pushed for aggressive monetization, while Mark wanted to prioritize user experience over ads. These early disagreements hinted at cracks in the partnership, though the team pressed on, united by the site's meteoric rise. By spring 2004, the Facebook had over 100,000 users across dozens of campuses, its blue logo a fixture on laptop screens. Mark began to see the Facebook as more than a college project. It was a platform with potential to connect not just students, but the world. Late at night, as he coded new features, he dreamed of taking the site beyond Harvard's gates. Palo Alto, the heart of Silicon Valley, beckoned a place where startups thrived and ideas became empires. As the semester wound down, Mark made a choice that would change his life. He'd leave Harvard, at least for a while, to chase that dream. The Facebook was no longer just a dorm room experiment. It was the start of something vast, a digital thread weaving through lives, ready to reshape how we connect. From dorm room to Silicon Valley, expansion to other universities. In the spring of 2004, the Facebook was no longer just Harvard's secret. What began as a late-night coding project in Mark Zuckerberg's Kirkland House dorm had become a campus obsession, with thousands of students creating profiles, sharing snippets of their lives, and connecting in ways that felt fresh and electric. But Mark saw something bigger, a platform that could weave together not just one school, but many. With his team of friends and coders by his side, he set out to expand the Facebook beyond Harvard's gates, a quiet ambition that would spark a wildfire of growth. The first step was to bring the Facebook to other Ivy League schools. In late February 2004, Mark and Dustin Moskovitz, his pragmatic coding partner, rolled out the site to Yale, Columbia, and Stanford. Each launch was deliberate, requiring students to sign up with their university email addresses to maintain exclusivity. The response was immediate and overwhelming. At Yale, students flocked to the site, drawn by its clean design and the thrill of seeing their social circles digitized. Columbia followed suit, with late-night dorms alive with cliques and chatter about profiles. Stanford, already a hub of tech enthusiasm, embraced the Facebook with fervor, its students marveling at how it captured the pulse of campus life. Within weeks, tens of thousands of new users had joined, each school adding fuel to the site's viral spread. The expansion wasn't just technical, it was cultural. The Facebook tapped into a universal desire to connect, to peek into others' lives while curating your own. Students listed their favorite movies, quoted song lyrics, and posted grainy photos, creating digital identities that felt both personal and public. Word of mouth drove growth, but so did the site's simplicity. Unlike clunky platforms like Friendster or MySpace, the Facebook was intuitive, its blue and white interface a blank canvas for connection. By March, Mark's team opened the site to more schools: Dartmouth, Cornell, Princeton. Each launch met with the same frenzy. Server traffic surged, forcing Dustin to scramble for solutions to keep the site online. Eduardo Saverin, handling the business side, began exploring ways to fund the growing operation as server costs climbed. The media started to notice. The Harvard Crimson had already covered the Facebook's campus takeover, but now bigger outlets came calling. Local papers ran stories about the Harvard kid behind the site, while tech blogs like TechCrunch marveled at its rapid spread. A New York Times piece in April 2004 called "The Facebook a social networking phenomenon," a phrase that felt weighty for a project barely 3 months old. The attention thrilled Mark's team, but also added pressure. Students at non-Ivy schools clamored for access, flooding Mark's inbox with pleas to bring the Facebook to their campuses. High schoolers, too, caught wind of it, though Mark held firm on the college-only rule for now. The site's exclusivity was its magic, a walled garden where users felt safe to share. By May 2004, the Facebook had over 100,000 users across dozens of universities, its growth outpacing anything Mark had imagined. Late at night, as he coded new features, he began to see the site not as a college project, but as a platform with global potential. The question wasn't just how to add more schools. It was how to build something that could scale to millions, even billions. Silicon Valley, with its startups and venture capital, loomed as the place to make that happen. As the semester ended, Mark faced a choice that would define his path, one that would pull him away from Harvard's familiar embrace. Let's follow him now as he steps away from one world and toward another, dropping out of Harvard. In the early summer of 2004, Mark Zuckerberg stood at a crossroads. The Facebook was thriving, its user base doubling every few weeks. But managing it from a Harvard dorm was like trying to steer a rocket ship from a bicycle. Servers crashed under the weight of traffic. New schools demanded access. And the team's shoestring budget strained at the seams. Mark, now 20, spent his days coding, answering emails, and dreaming of what the Facebook could become. But Harvard's academic rhythm exams, papers, lectures felt like an anchor. To keep the Facebook growing, he'd need to take a leap, one that meant leaving the safety of college behind. The decision to drop out wasn't impulsive, though it might have seemed that way to outsiders. Mark had always been pragmatic, weighing options with a coder's logic. He saw the Facebook as a rare opportunity, a chance to build something that could outlast any degree. Late-night talks with Dustin Moskovitz and Eduardo Severin cemented his resolve. Dustin, ever practical, agreed to join him in the venture, while Eduardo, focused on the business side, saw potential for real revenue. Mark's parents, Edward and Karen, were supportive but cautious, urging him to keep the door open for a return to Harvard. Mark reassured them. This wasn't goodbye to education, just a pause to chase a dream. He promised himself he'd go back if the Facebook fizzled a fallback he doubted he'd need. In June 2004, Mark packed his bags and left Cambridge, Massachusetts, for Palo Alto, California. The move felt like stepping into a new code base, full of unknowns but brimming with possibility. Palo Alto was the heart of Silicon Valley, a sun-soaked sprawl of low-rise offices and palm trees where tech giants like Google and Apple were born. Mark, Dustin, and a few friends rented a modest house on La Jennifer Way, a sublet that became their base. The house was a startup cliché mattresses on the floor, pizza boxes stacked high, laptops humming 24/7. They called it Casa Facebook, a chaotic hub where code and ambition collided. Mark thrived in the chaos, his focus laser-sharp as he coded by day and brainstormed by night. Leaving Harvard was a gamble, but Mark felt the pull of something bigger. Palo Alto wasn't just a place, it was a mindset, a land of risk-takers and visionaries. As he settled into the house, the weight of his choice sank in. There was no turning back, not yet. The Facebook was his future, and Silicon Valley was where it would grow. But to turn a dorm room project into a real company, he'd need more than code and enthusiasm. He'd need money, mentors, and a spark of luck. Now let's step into that sunlit house where a company began to take shape. Founding the Facebook company. By the summer of 2004, the Facebook was a runaway train with over 200,000 users and new schools joining weekly. But in the cramped living room of Casa Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg and his team faced a harsh reality. Passion alone wouldn't keep the servers running. The site's growth demanded cash, lots of it, for hardware, bandwidth, and staff. Mark, still coding in flip-flops and hoodies, knew the Facebook needed to evolve from a project into a company. That meant finding investors and navigating a world he barely understood. It also meant meeting a man who'd changed the course of his journey, Sean Parker. The first step was formalizing the business. In June 2004, Mark, Dustin Moskovitz, and Eduardo Saverin incorporated the Facebook as a Delaware LLC, a legal structure that gave them flexibility to raise funds. Eduardo, still acting as CFO, had already put in $18,000 of his own money to cover early costs, but that was a drop in the bucket. Mark's vision, connecting every college in America, maybe the world, required serious capital. Enter Peter Thiel, a Silicon Valley heavyweight and co-founder of PayPal. Thiel had heard about the Facebook through a mutual connection and was intrigued by its explosive growth. In August 2004, after a meeting with Mark and his team, Thiel agreed to invest $500,000 for a 10% stake in the company, valuing the Facebook at $5 million. The deal was a lifeline, giving the team breathing room to scale servers and hire engineers. Thiel also brought credibility, signaling to other investors that this college kid startup was worth betting on. But money wasn't the only catalyst. Sean Parker, a charismatic 24-year-old entrepreneur, entered the picture like a gust of wind. Parker was a tech prodigy, co-founder of Napster, the music-sharing platform that had rocked the industry before legal battles brought it down. By 2004, he was a Silicon Valley nomad, known for his charm and knack for spotting the next big thing. Parker stumbled across the Facebook while crashing on a friend's couch, instantly seeing its potential to redefine social interaction. He tracked down Mark, arranging a chance meeting at a Palo Alto restaurant. Over dinner, Parker's energy captivated Mark. He spoke of building empires, disrupting industries, and staying true to a founder's vision. Mark, usually reserved, was hooked. Parker joined the Facebook as president, bringing a dose of polish to the scrappy startup. He moved into Casa Facebook, sleeping on a futon and diving into strategy. Parker streamlined the company's pitch, dropping the from the Facebook to make it snappier, just Facebook. He introduced Mark to his network, opening doors to more investors and advisors. Parker also pushed for a bold culture, urging Mark to move fast and break things, a mantra that would define Facebook's early years. His influence wasn't all rosy, though. Parker's brash style and party-heavy lifestyle clashed with some team members, and his Napster baggage raised eyebrows among investors. Still, his vision aligned with Mark's: build something massive, something that could change the world. With Thiel's funding and Parker's guidance, Facebook began to look like a real company. The team hired its first employees, mostly young coders who shared Mark's relentless drive. They upgraded from Casa Facebook to a small office in downtown Palo Alto, though the vibe stayed chaotic whiteboards scrawled with ideas, ping-pong tables doubling as desks. By fall 2004, Facebook had 1 million users, a milestone that felt surreal. Mark, now CEO, was learning to lead, balancing code with boardroom talks. But growth brought new challenges. Tensions simmered with Eduardo, who remained in New York, focused on ad deals that Mark deemed premature, and Parker's wildcard energy hinted at storms ahead. As the year drew to a close, Facebook stood on the edge of greatness, its roots sinking deep into Silicon Valley's soil. Early business struggles, Eduardo-Saverin conflict. By the fall of 2004, Facebook was no longer a dorm room dream. It was a company, pulsing with potential, but teetering on the edge of chaos. The Palo Alto house on La Jennifer Way, once a haven of pizza boxes and late-night coding, had given way to a proper office. But the transition wasn't smooth. With over 1 million users and new colleges joining weekly, the site's servers groaned under the strain. Mark Zuckerberg, now a 20-year-old CEO, juggled coding with leadership, his hoodie-clad figure a constant in the office's whirlwind. But beneath the excitement, cracks were forming: technical, financial, and personal. The biggest fracture would come with Eduardo Saverin, Mark's friend and co-founder, whose role in Facebook's story was about to take a dramatic turn. The early struggles were relentless. Server costs skyrocketed as user numbers climbed, and Peter Thiel's $500,000 investment, while a lifeline, wasn't enough to sustain the growth. Mark and Dustin Moskovitz worked around the clock to optimize the site, but crashes were frequent, frustrating users who expected seamless access. Hiring new engineers was a priority, but finding talent willing to join a scrappy startup was tough. Meanwhile, the team faced a strategic divide. Mark wanted to keep Facebook free and user-focused, adding features like photo sharing to boost engagement. Eduardo, still in New York and acting as CFO, pushed for monetization through ads, believing revenue was the key to survival. The distance, both geographic and philosophical, created tension. Mark, immersed in Silicon Valley's build first, monetize later ethos, saw Eduardo's approach as short-sighted. Late-night calls grew strained, their once easy friendship fraying under the pressure. The conflict reached a breaking point in mid-2004 when Facebook needed more funding to scale. Sean Parker, the charismatic president, orchestrated a new investment round, bringing in venture capitalists like XL Partners, who would later invest $12.7 million in 2005. But to secure these deals, Facebook had to restructure. Sean, with Mark's backing, proposed a new corporate structure that issued additional shares, diluting the ownership of existing stakeholders, including Eduardo. As CFO, Eduardo held a significant stake, reportedly around 30%, but he was hesitant to sign documents that would formalize the new structure. Frustrated by what he saw as Mark's reluctance to prioritize profits, Eduardo froze Facebook's bank account, a move meant to force a conversation, but one that infuriated Mark and Sean. In their view, Eduardo's actions threatened the company's survival at a critical moment. The fallout was swift. In January 2005, with legal advice from Sean, Mark and the board reduced Eduardo's stake to less than 10% through a process called dilution, effectively sidelining him. Eduardo, blindsided in New York, felt betrayed. The friend who'd seeded Facebook with $18,000 and shared late-night dreams in Harvard dorms was now an outsider. By summer 2005, Eduardo filed a lawsuit against Mark and Facebook, alleging breach of fiduciary duty and wrongful dilution. The legal battle was bitter, spilling into headlines and casting a shadow over Facebook's rise. Mark, stoic but stung, avoided public comment, focusing instead on the company. The lawsuit dragged on for years, finally settling in 2008. Eduardo received an undisclosed sum, rumored to be in the tens of millions, and his name was restored as a co-founder on Facebook's masthead. But the friendship was irreparable, a quiet casualty of ambition and growth. The aftermath left Mark reflective. The Eduardo conflict taught him the cost of scaling a vision. Trust could fracture as fast as servers could crash. Yet it also hardened his resolve. With Sean Parker steering strategy and new funds flowing in, Facebook emerged stronger, its user base nearing 5 million by late 2005. The struggle had been a crucible, forging a company ready to face bigger challenges. As the dust settled, Mark turned his gaze to the future. Knowing Facebook needed more than code to thrive, it needed leadership. Now let's drift to a new chapter in the story where a company matured and a new voice joined the fold. The Facebook grows up. By 2006, Facebook was a juggernaut, with millions of users and a valuation creeping toward $1 billion. The Palo Alto office buzzed with young engineers, their energy fueled by Red Bull and the thrill of building something global. But Mark Zuckerberg, now 22, knew the company was outgrowing its startup roots. Servers were stabilizing, but leadership was stretched thin. Sean Parker's wild card energy, while pivotal early on, led to clashes with investors, and he stepped down in 2005 after a personal scandal. Mark needed someone who could turn Facebook into a sustainable business without losing its soul. That someone was Sheryl Sandberg, a decision that would redefine the company's trajectory. In early 2008, Mark met Sheryl at a holiday party hosted by a mutual friend. Sheryl, then 38, was a Google veteran, a polished executive who'd helped build its ad business into a powerhouse. She was warm, strategic, and a master at navigating corporate waters, everything Mark wasn't. Their conversations clicked instantly. Sheryl saw Facebook's potential to connect the world, and Mark saw in her a partner who could manage the business while he focused on products. After months of talks, Sheryl joined as COO in March 2008. Her arrival was like a steady hand on the tiller. She streamlined operations, built a sales team, and crafted a monetization strategy that didn't alienate users. Ads became targeted, subtle, blending into the platform's flow. Under her guidance, Facebook's revenue soared from $150 million in 2007 to $500 million by 2009. Sheryl also brought a new culture. The scrappy startup vibe gave way to structure meetings, budgets, performance reviews. Some early employees grumbled, missing the chaos of Casa Facebook, but most saw the need. Sheryl mentored Mark, teaching him how to lead a growing workforce while staying true to his vision. Their partnership became legendary. Mark, the hoodie-wearing visionary, Sheryl, the diplomat who made his dreams profitable. Together, they opened Facebook to the public in 2006, dropping the college-only rule and welcoming anyone over 13. The user base exploded, hitting 100 million by late 2008. Scaling infrastructure was the other half of growing up. By 2007, Facebook's servers handled billions of page views monthly, a technical feat that pushed the limits of early cloud computing. Dustin Moskovitz, still a key figure, led efforts to build data centers, moving away from rented servers to custom-built ones. The team pioneered open-source tools like Cassandra, a database system that could handle massive data loads, and optimized the site's code to load faster. Downtime became rare, a far cry from the crash-prone days of 2004. Mark invested heavily in security, learning from early privacy missteps like face mash. Features like the news feed, launched in 2006, transformed how users consumed content, though it sparked backlash for exposing too much. Mark listened, tweaked, and pressed forward, his focus on connection unwavering. By 2009, Facebook had 350 million users, a global platform that was reshaping communication. The Palo Alto office, now a sleek campus, hummed with purpose. Mark, once a kid coding in a dorm, was now a CEO steering a billion-dollar company. Sheryl's arrival and infrastructure overhaul had given Facebook wings, but the journey wasn't without turbulence. The world was watching, and with growth came scrutiny about privacy, power, and the young man at the helm. As the decade closed, Facebook stood tall, ready for its next leap, one that would take it to Wall Street and beyond. The Facebook era, power, growth, and scrutiny, going public. By 2012, Facebook was no longer the scrappy startup born in a Harvard dorm. It was a global giant, with nearly 1 billion users sharing photos, status updates, and memories across continents. Mark Zuckerberg, now 28, stood at the helm of a company valued in the tens of billions, its Palo Alto headquarters, a sprawling campus of glass and ambition. But to fuel its next phase, new features, acquisitions, and global expansion, Facebook needed more than venture capital. It needed the world's markets. In May 2012, Facebook launched its initial public offering, IPO, a moment that would cement its place in history, but also bring unexpected turbulence. The IPO was one of the most anticipated in tech history, rivaling Google's debut 8 years earlier. On May 18, 2012, Facebook went public on the NASDAQ, offering 421 million shares at $38 each, raising $16 billion and valuing the company at $104 billion, the largest tech IPO ever at the time. Mark, in his signature hoodie, rang the opening bell remotely from the Facebook's campus, surrounded by cheering employees. The mood was electric, a celebration of 8 years of relentless growth. The IPO created instant wealth. Mark's stake was worth over $19 billion, while early employees and investors like Peter Thiel reaped fortunes. Sheryl Sandberg, the COO, saw her shares valued at nearly $1 billion. For a company that started with a $1,000 investment from Eduardo Severin, the numbers were staggering. But the euphoria didn't last. Almost immediately, the IPO stumbled. Technical glitches on NASDAQ delayed trading, sowing confusion. Worse, the stock price faltered. Within days, shares dipped below $38, and by August, they'd plummeted to $17.55, a nearly 50% drop. Investors cried foul, accusing Facebook of overhyping its value. Lawsuits followed, alleging that Morgan Stanley and other underwriters had shared pessimistic revenue forecasts with select clients, but not the public. Critics pointed to Facebook's reliance on desktop ads in a mobile-first world, questioning whether it could adapt. The media pounced, labeling the IPO a fiasco, and speculating that Mark, the boy wonder CEO, was in over his head. Mark stayed calm, his focus unwavering. He'd always played the long game, and the IPO struggles didn't shake him. Behind the scenes, Sheryl and the team were already pivoting to mobile, rolling out targeted ads that fit seamlessly into users' feeds. By late 2012, mobile revenue was climbing, proving skeptics wrong. Employees, many of whom held stock options, felt the sting of the price drop but rallied around Mark's vision. He doubled down on innovation, pushing features like timeline and graph search to keep users engaged. By mid-2013, the stock began to recover, climbing past $38 and silencing doubters. The IPO's rocky start had been a lesson in resilience, showing Mark and his team that even giants could stumble, but they could also rise again. The financial windfall, despite initial hiccups, gave Facebook firepower. With billions in cash, Mark could chase bold bets, eyeing acquisitions to expand the empire. The IPO had transformed Facebook from a private startup into a public behemoth, answerable to shareholders, but still driven by Mark's dream of connection. As the stock steadied, the world watched, wondering what this young CEO would do with his newfound power. Let's follow that ambition now to a pair of deals that would reshape the social media landscape. Acquiring Instagram WhatsApp. In 2012, as Facebook navigated its post-IPO turbulence, Mark Zuckerberg saw a shifting digital world. Smartphones were everywhere, and new apps were capturing users' attention. Two stood out: Instagram, a photo-sharing platform with a sleek visual vibe, and WhatsApp, a messaging app connecting millions globally. Mark, ever the strategist, knew owning these platforms could secure Facebook's dominance. Between 2012 and 2014, he made two blockbuster acquisitions, Instagram for $1 billion and WhatsApp for $19 billion, moves that raised eyebrows but proved his knack for seeing the future. The Instagram deal came first. Launched in 2010, Instagram had exploded to 30 million users by early 2012. Its filters and square photos a hit among millennials. Mark saw it as a mobile-first complement to Facebook, a way to counter the shift away from desktop. In April 2012, he met Instagram's co-founder, Kevin Systrom, at a coffee shop, hammering out a $1 billion deal over days. The price shocked the industry. Instagram had no revenue and just 13 employees. Critics called it reckless, but Mark saw value in its user base and potential for ad growth. The deal closed in September 2012, just months after the IPO. Mark promised to let Instagram operate independently, keeping its app separate from Facebook's. Under Facebook's wing, Instagram added features like stories and ads, growing to over 1 billion users by 2018. The acquisition, once mocked, became a masterstroke, with Instagram's value estimated at $100 billion by 2020. WhatsApp was a bolder bet. Founded in 2009 by Jan Koum and Brian Acton, WhatsApp offered simple encrypted messaging, popular in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. By 2014, it had 450 million users, dwarfing Facebook Messenger. Mark saw it as a cornerstone for global communication, especially in markets where Facebook lagged. In February 2014, he invited Koum to his Palo Alto home, finalizing a $19 billion deal, $4 billion in cash, $12 billion in stock, and $3 billion in incentives. The price stunned Silicon Valley. WhatsApp's revenue was minimal, and its anti-ad stance clashed with Facebook's model. But Mark bet on its growth and privacy appeal. Like Instagram, WhatsApp stayed semi-independent, retaining its encryption and minimalist design. By 2018, it had 1.5 billion users, proving its worth, though monetization remained tricky. Integrating these apps wasn't seamless. Instagram meshed well, its ad system leveraging Facebook's data prowess. Sheryl Sandberg's team built tools to let businesses advertise across both platforms, boosting revenue. But WhatsApp was thornier. Koum and Acton resisted Facebook's push for ads, clashing with Mark over privacy. Both left by 2018, citing philosophical differences. Still, the acquisitions cemented Facebook's ecosystem, a trinity of apps: Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, connecting over 2 billion people. Mark's strategy was clear: buy or build the future, even at a steep price. These deals shielded Facebook from rivals like Snapchat and WeChat, ensuring its grip on social media. Now let's drift to a darker moment when that power drew the world's scrutiny. Data privacy, Cambridge Analytica. By 2018, Facebook was a colossus, with 2.3 billion users and a market cap nearing $600 billion. But with scale came responsibility, and Facebook's handling of user data was about to ignite a firestorm. The Cambridge Analytica scandal, unfolding in 2018, would become a defining crisis, exposing vulnerabilities in Facebook's platform and thrusting Mark Zuckerberg into the global spotlight. It was a saga of trust betrayed, political manipulation, and a CEO facing the consequences of unchecked growth. The scandal's roots trace to 2013, when a researcher named Alexander Kogan created a personality quiz app, This Is Your Digital Life, on Facebook. About 300,000 users took the quiz, granting access to their data likes, posts, profiles. But the app also scraped data from their friends, exploiting a loophole in Facebook's API that allowed such access with consent. Kogan collected data on up to 87 million users, mostly Americans, and shared it with Cambridge Analytica, a UK-based firm tied to political campaigns. The firm used the data to build psychographic profiles, targeting voters with tailored ads during the 2016 U.S. election and Brexit referendum. The breach violated Facebook's policies, but the company didn't detect it until 2015, when it banned Kogan's app and demanded the data be deleted. Cambridge Analytica claimed compliance, but didn't follow through. The truth surfaced in March 2018, when whistleblower Christopher Wiley, a former Cambridge Analytica employee, told The Guardian and the New York Times that the data had been misused. The revelations sparked global outrage. Users felt violated, their personal details weaponized without consent. Politicians accused Facebook of enabling election interference. The hashtag #DeleteFacebook trended, and the company's stock plunged 20%, wiping out $120 billion in value. Mark, usually reserved, issued a statement admitting a breach of trust and promising reforms. But the public wanted more. They wanted him to face the fire. In April 2018, Mark testified before Congress over 2 days, grilled by senators and representatives in marathon hearings. The 33-year-old CEO, in a suit and tie instead of his usual hoodie, sat alone at a wooden table, cameras flashing. Questions ranged from privacy policies to Russian interference, many laced with frustration at tech's unchecked power. Some senators struggled with tech concepts, asking how Facebook made money. "We run ads," Mark replied calmly. But others pressed hard on data misuse. Mark apologized repeatedly, acknowledging mistakes and outlining fixes, tighter app controls, user data audits, and ad transparency. He stayed composed, his voice steady, though the strain was visible in his furrowed brow. The hearings were less about punishment. Congress imposed no immediate penalties and more about signaling accountability. Back at Facebook, Mark rolled out changes, limiting third-party data access and launching privacy tools. The scandal's aftermath was profound. It eroded user trust, spurring calls for regulation, like the EU's GDPR, which fined Facebook €1.7 billion in 2022 for related violations. It also shifted Mark's outlook. He became more vocal about privacy, pivoting Facebook toward encrypted messaging and privacy-focused platforms. Cambridge Analytica folded. Its reputation in tatters, but the damage lingered. For users, it was a wake-up call about data's power. For Facebook, a reminder that growth came with scrutiny. As Mark navigated the fallout, he knew the world was watching, judging not just his company, but the legacy he was building. Internal culture and challenges. By the late 2010s, Facebook's Menlo Park headquarters was a tech utopia, open-plan offices, free gourmet cafeterias, and colorful murals preaching "move fast and break things." The sprawling campus, home to tens of thousands of employees, buzzed with the energy of a company connecting over 2 billion people. Mark Zuckerberg, still in his hoodie, roamed the halls, a symbol of the startup spirit that lingered despite Facebook's size. But beneath the perks and ping-pong tables, the work environment was intense, and internal challenges were brewing, testing the company's culture and its moral compass. The workplace was a double-edged sword. Employees, often young and brilliant, worked long hours, driven by the mission to make the world more open and connected. Teams raced to launch features like live video or marketplace, fueled by caffeine and Mark's relentless pace. The culture rewarded innovation. Engineers could pitch ideas directly to leadership, and hackathons birthed features like the like button. But the pressure was unrelenting. Deadlines loomed, and the 24/7 news cycle meant constant scrutiny. Employees faced burnout, and the open office, meant to foster collaboration, sometimes felt like a fishbowl. Mark and Sheryl Sandberg pushed for transparency, holding weekly Quanda sessions. But some felt their concerns about privacy or mental health were glossed over. Internal dissent grew, especially after Cambridge Analytica. Employees began questioning Facebook's ethics. Was the platform amplifying division? Were target ads enabling harm? In 2018, a group of workers penned an open letter demanding better handling of misinformation. Others clashed over political ads, with some arguing for stricter rules and others defending free speech. Mark, once seen as a visionary, faced pushback. His decision to keep controversial posts like those from political figures sparked walkouts and resignations. By 2020, a virtual walkout saw hundreds protest Facebook's moderation policies. Engineers leaked internal memos to the press, exposing debates over algorithms that favored divisive content. These leaks painted a company grappling with its power, its mission at odds with its impact. Mark responded by tightening content moderation, hiring thousands of reviewers and investing in AI to flag harmful posts. But the fractures remained. The culture, once unified by a shared dream, now felt splintered, with idealistic newcomers clashing with pragmatic veterans. Sheryl, a stabilizing force, faced her own criticism for defending policies employees disliked. As Facebook grew, so did its growing pains, a reminder that even a tech giant could struggle to align its heart with its hands. Now let's drift to the world beyond those walls, where a different story was being told, one of movies, memes, and a CEO's image. Public image media portrayal. As Facebook's influence soared, so did the spotlight on Mark Zuckerberg. By the 2010s, he was no longer just a tech founder, he was a cultural figure, his every move dissected by media and masses alike. Two forces shaped his public image: The Social Network, a 2010 film that dramatized Facebook's origins, and the endless stream of memes that turned Mark into a caricature. Together, they painted a portrait that was part myth, part truth, and wholly inescapable. The Social Network, directed by David Fincher and written by Aaron Sorkin, hit theaters in October 2010 when Facebook was nearing 500 million users. The film, based on Ben Mesrich's book, The Accidental Billionaires, chronicled the company's Harvard roots, portraying Mark as a brilliant but socially awkward anti-hero. Jesse Eisenberg's Mark was cold, calculating, betraying friends like Eduardo Saverin to build an empire. The movie was a critical hit, grossing $225 million and earning 8 Oscar nominations. Audiences loved its sharp dialogue and gritty drama, but Mark called it fiction, insisting it exaggerated his motives and personality. Eduardo's lawsuit and the face mask scandal were real, but the film's depiction of Mark as a loner driven by rejection stung. Still, it cemented his image as a tech wunderkind, flaws and all, introducing Facebook's story to millions who'd never heard of Kirkland House. The film's impact lingered, but the internet had its own way of shaping Mark's image: memes. By the mid-2010s, Mark was a meme magnet, his stiff demeanor and intense stare ripe for parody. A 2018 photo of him testifying before Congress, pale, suited, perched on a booster seat, spawned countless jokes. Captions called him a robot or alien, riffing on his awkward delivery and clipped answers. A viral video of Mark drinking water mid-testimony became a GIF, looped endlessly. Older clips, like a 2004 interview where a sweaty Mark touted the Facebook, resurfaced, fueling nostalgia and mockery. Even his hobbies, surfing with sunscreen slathered on his face, or grilling with a robotic precision, became meme fodder. Social media, the very platform he built, turned him into a punchline. Mark leaned into some of the humor, posting self-aware content like a video of himself running to celebrate Facebook's growth. But the memes cut deeper than he let on. They amplified a narrative of him as out of touch, a billionaire disconnected from the platform's users. Critics used the memes to underscore real grievances, privacy scandals, misinformation, monopoly power. Yet the memes also humanized him, making him relatable in their absurdity. Fans defended him, arguing he was a shy introvert, thrust into a public role. The internet's love-hate relationship with Mark mirrored its view of Facebook: indispensable, flawed, and endlessly debated. The media portrayal from Sorkin's script to Twitter's memes shaped how the world saw Mark. The social network gave him a cinematic legacy, while memes made him a cultural constant. Both obscured the quieter truth: a man navigating unprecedented power, learning in real time how to lead a platform that touched billions. As the 2010s drew to a close, Mark's image was set. A visionary, a villain, a meme all at once. Picture a world where screens give way to new realities, where connections stretch beyond posts and likes into spaces yet to be built. This is the story of Mark Zuckerberg's boldest leap yet, a pivot from the past to a future he's betting everything on. Let's drift into this final chapter, where a company transforms and a vision takes flight. Meta, the metaverse. What comes next? Rebranding to Meta. In the fall of 2021, Facebook stood at a crossroads. With over 3 billion users across its apps, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, it was a global titan, but its name carried baggage. Scandals like Cambridge Analytica, misinformation debates, and antitrust scrutiny had tarnished the brand. Mark Zuckerberg, now 37, saw a chance to redefine his company's story. On October 28, 2021, at the annual Connect conference, he announced a seismic shift. Facebook was no longer just a social media company. It was Meta, a name reflecting a new focus on the metaverse, a digital realm blending virtual and augmented reality. The rebrand was a gamble, a bid to leave the past behind and claim the future. The name change wasn't just cosmetic. Mark explained that Facebook no longer captured the company's scope, which spanned apps, hardware, and emerging tech. The term meta, derived from Greek meaning beyond, signaled ambition, a vision of immersive worlds where people could work, play, and connect in 3D. The corporate name changed to Meta Platforms, Inc., while the Facebook app kept its name, much like Google's parent company became Alphabet. The rebrand came with a new logo, a blue infinity symbol, and a promise to invest billions in virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality, AR. Mark framed it as a natural evolution, pointing to years of work on Oculus, the VR company acquired in 2014. But critics saw another motive: a distraction from Facebook's controversies, a way to polish a bruised image. Public reception was mixed, leaning skeptical. Tech enthusiasts were intrigued, drawn to Mark's demos of virtual workspaces and avatar-filled concerts. But many users were confused or dismissive. Social media buzzed with jokes memes, compared Meta to a sci-fi dystopia, or mocked Mark's wooden keynote delivery. A viral tweet quipped, "Changing your name doesn't erase your past, Zuck." Mainstream media, from the New York Times to BBC, questioned the timing, noting the announcement came amid whistleblower leaks about Facebook's handling of harmful content. Frances Haugen, a former employee, had released internal documents showing the company prioritized engagement over safety, fueling calls for regulation. To some, Meta felt like a pivot to dodge accountability. Others saw promise. Investors initially winced, Meta's stock dipped 5% post-announcement, but Wall Street warmed to the long-term vision. Tech rivals like Microsoft and Apple were also eyeing VR and AR, and Mark's early bet could position Meta as a leader. Employees were divided. Some rallied behind the futuristic mission, while others worried about job security as resources shifted from social media to unproven tech. By 2022, Meta's Reality Labs, the VR/AR division, was losing $10 billion annually, raising stakes for the rebrand's success. Mark, undeterred, doubled down, insisting the metaverse was a decade-long journey. The name Meta became a symbol of his defiance, a refusal to be defined by past mistakes, a quiet vow to build something new. Let's step now into that vision, a world of headsets and digital horizons. The metaverse vision. Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse wasn't just a buzzword, it was a dream of a new internet, a 3D space where avatars replaced profiles and virtual rooms outshone news feeds. By 2021, he was all in, pouring Meta's resources into virtual reality VR and augmented reality AR. The metaverse, as Mark described it, would let people teleport to shared spaces, offices, concerts, game worlds, blending the physical and digital. It was ambitious, costly, and divisive. But for Mark, it was the next frontier of human connection, a natural successor to the smartphone era. At its heart were two pillars: Horizon Worlds, Meta's virtual platform, and Quest headsets, its gateway to the metaverse. Horizon Worlds was Meta's flagship metaverse app, launched in beta in 2019 and opened to U.S. users in 2021. It was a sandbox where users, as legless avatars, could build and explore virtual spaces, think Minecraft meets Zoom. You could host a comedy show, play poker, or wander a digital art gallery, all from a headset. Mark touted it as a social hub, demoing himself fencing with an Olympic athlete or brainstorming with colleagues in a virtual boardroom. But Horizon Worlds was rough around the edges. Graphics were cartoonish, lagging behind gaming platforms like Roblox. Early reviews were harsh. Users complained of glitches, sparse content, and awkward interactions. A 2022 screenshot of Mark's blocky avatar in a barren virtual plaza went viral, mocked for looking like a low-budget game. Meta scrambled to improve visuals, but adoption was slow, with only 300,000 monthly users by 2023. The Quest headsets, however, were a brighter spot. Acquired through the 2014 purchase of Oculus, the Quest line, starting with the Oculus Quest in 2019 and followed by Quest 2 in 2020, made VR accessible. Priced at $300, Quest 2 was wireless, standalone, and user-friendly, selling over 15 million units by 2023. It offered games, fitness apps, and work tools, appealing beyond hardcore gamers. Mark saw Quest as the metaverse's iPhone, a device to bring billions into virtual worlds. Meta invested heavily, subsidizing hardware to boost adoption and building a content ecosystem with apps like Beat Saber. But losses piled up. Reality Labs burned $13.7 billion in 2022 alone. Investors grumbled, and layoffs hit Meta in 2022 and 2023, cutting 21,000 jobs as Mark prioritized VR over traditional growth. The vision wasn't without critics. Tech giants like Apple, with its $3,500 Vision Pro headset in 2023, challenged Meta's mass-market approach. Privacy concerns lingered. Meta's data collection in VR raised eyebrows, especially post-Cambridge Analytica. Cultural pushback grew too. Some saw the metaverse as escapist, a billionaire's fantasy ignoring real-world problems. Yet Mark pressed on, unveiling Quest 3 in 2023 and teasing AR glasses for 2025. He cited historical parallels, PCs. Smartphones arguing transformative tech takes time. Partnerships with Microsoft and Ray-Ban for smart glasses bolstered credibility, and Horizon Workrooms showed promise for remote work. By 2025, the metaverse remained a work in progress, but Mark's commitment was unshaken. A quiet bet that virtual worlds would one day rival the physical. Now let's shift to another frontier, where artificial intelligence and new platforms reshape connection. AI, threads, and future of social media. As Meta chased the metaverse, Mark Zuckerberg was hedging his bets with another frontier, artificial intelligence, AI, and the next wave of social media. By the early 2020s, AI was transforming tech, from chatbots to image generation, and Mark saw it as a pillar for Meta's future. At the same time, he launched Threads, a text-based app to rival Twitter, rebranded as X, signaling Meta's ambition to stay dominant in social networking. These moves, AI innovation, and Threads' debut reflected Mark's drive to evolve Meta beyond its Facebook roots, navigating a world where competition and user expectations were fiercer than ever. Threads launched in July 2023, a direct jab at X, which was faltering under new ownership. Built by Instagram's team, Threads offered a Twitter-like experience, short posts, real-time chatter but tied to Instagram's user base for instant scale. Within days, it hit 100 million signups, fueled by users frustrated with X's changes. Mark framed Threads as a public square, emphasizing lighter moderation than X's free speech stance. But the hype faded fast. Engagement dropped as users missed Twitter's edge and network effects. By 2024, Threads had stabilized at 150 million monthly users, a fraction of Instagram's 2 billion, but enough to keep Meta in the game. Updates like improved search and trending topics helped, but Threads remained a work in progress, a test of Meta's ability to disrupt entrenched rivals. AI was where Mark's vision shone brighter. Meta's AI efforts, led by its AI division, FAIR, focused on large language models, LLMs, and generative AI. In 2023, Meta released Llama, a family of efficient LLMs for research, rivaling OpenAI's GPT models. Unlike competitors charging for access, Meta open-sourced Llama, earning goodwill from developers, but sparking debate over AI safety. Mark saw AI as a tool to enhance Meta's apps, smarter chatbots for WhatsApp, AI-driven content for Instagram Reels, even virtual assistants in the metaverse. By 2024, Meta's AI-powered ad targeting, boosting revenue, and fueled experiments like AI-generated avatars in Horizon Worlds. Mark's personal passion for AI was evident. He hosted AI hackathons and touted its potential to augment human creativity. The social media landscape was shifting, and Mark aimed to lead it. TikTok's rise and X's volatility showed users craved fresh platforms. Meta countered with Reels, stealing TikTok's short video thunder, while Threads kept pressure on X. But AI was the wild card, promising to redefine how users interacted. Privacy remained a hurdle. Meta's AI training data drew scrutiny, echoing past scandals. Still, Mark pushed forward, announcing a $10 billion AI investment in 2024, including custom chips to rival NVIDIA. His goal, a universal AI integrated across Meta's ecosystem, from glasses to news feeds. As 2025 dawned, Meta was no longer just a social network. It was a lab for AI and virtual worlds, with Threads as a toehold in the next social frontier. Let's linger now in the mind of the man behind Meta, a quiet force, steering a vision that stretches beyond the horizon. As we near the end of this tale, the story turns inward to his leadership and the mark he's leaving on the world. Leadership Style Philosophy. In 2025, Mark Zuckerberg, at 41, remains an enigma, a hoodie-clad billionaire whose leadership style defies the polished playbook of corporate CEOs. From a Harvard dorm to Meta's Menlo Park campus, his approach has evolved but stayed rooted in a singular trait: long-term thinking. Mark doesn't chase quarterly profits or fleeting trends. He bets on decades, building systems that outlast skepticism. This philosophy, paired with the personal quirks that border on myth, has shaped Meta into a tech titan, even as it sparks debate about the man at its helm. Mark's long-term vision is his North Star. When he launched the Facebook in 2004, he saw a world connected, not just a college network. When he rebranded to Meta in 2021, he envisioned a metaverse that might take a decade to mature, undeterred by early losses or mockery. This patience frustrates investors. Meta's $40 billion in Reality Labs losses by 2024 raised eyebrows, but it's deliberate. Mark often cites historical tech shifts, like the internet's slow rise in the 1990s, arguing that transformative ideas need time to breathe. He's willing to endure short-term pain, as with the 2012 IPO dip or Instagram's $1 billion price tag, for exponential gains. At Meta, this manifests in bold bets: AI research open-sourced to spur innovation, or Quest headsets sold at a loss to seed the metaverse. Employees describe his mantra, focus on impact, urging teams to prioritize scale over polish. Yet this vision can feel relentless. His push for AI and VR has led to layoffs, testing morale. His personal habits are as distinctive as his strategy. Mark is a creature of routine, waking early to train in mixed martial arts, a discipline he took up in his 30s to channel energy. He's known for minimalist quirks, wearing the same gray t-shirt for years to reduce decision fatigue, or setting annual challenges like learning Mandarin or running 365 miles in 2016. At work, he's intense but approachable, scribbling ideas on whiteboards and grilling engineers in late-night coding sessions. His social awkwardness, memed to oblivion, belies a dry humor. He once joked about his robotic Congress testimony, winning laughs at a staff meeting. But he's also private, shielding his family wife, Priscilla Chan, and their 3 daughters from the spotlight. Colleagues say he's grown more empathetic, shaped by fatherhood and philanthropy through the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, which funnels billions into education and health. Mark's leadership isn't flawless. Critics call him stubborn, citing his resistance to early privacy reforms or his slow response to misinformation. Employees sometimes chafe at his top-down style, feeling big decisions like the Meta pivot lack input. Yet his ability to learn from mistakes, like tightening data controls post-Cambridge Analytica, keeps Meta resilient. His philosophy, think big, stay focused, embrace failure, has carried him from a dorm room to a global stage, but it leaves a question. Can he balance ambition with accountability in a world that watches his every move? Now let's drift to the broader canvas, where a legacy unfolds, its final strokes yet to be painted. Legacy and progress. Mark Zuckerberg's story is inseparable from the tech revolution he helped ignite. By 2025, Meta connects over 3.5 billion people monthly. Its apps, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Threads woven into daily life. His influence on technology and society is undeniable. A tapestry of connection, controversy, and uncharted potential. But as history begins to sketch his legacy, it remains a work in progress, a narrative that raises as many questions as it answers. Mark's impact on tech is monumental. He didn't invent social media, but he perfected it. turning a dorm room idea into a platform that redefined communication. Facebook's newsfeed, launched in 2006, changed how we consume information, for better or worse. His acquisitions, Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus, showed a knack for spotting the next wave, cementing Meta's dominance. The open sourcing of AI tools like Llama has spurred innovation, while Quest headsets have made VR mainstream, hinting at a metaverse that could reshape work and play. Competitors like Apple and TikTok borrow from his playbook even as they challenge him. Beyond products, Mark's move fast and break things ethos became Silicon Valley gospel, inspiring startups but also fueling tech's reckless streak. His societal influence is more complex. Facebook connected billions, giving voice to the marginalized and fueling movements like the Arab Spring. But it also amplified division, from fake news to polarized echo chambers. Cambridge Analytica exposed how data could manipulate democracy, while whistleblowers revealed Facebook's struggle to curb harmful content. Mark's pivot to Meta and AI aims to address these flaws, promising encrypted messaging and smarter moderation. But skeptics see a pattern innovation outpacing ethics. His philanthropy, through the Zuckerberg Initiative, has donated billions to cure diseases and reform education. Yet critics argue it's a salve for tech's harms. Society grapples with his creation, a world more connected, yet more fragmented. What will history say? If the metaverse succeeds, Mark could be remembered as a visionary who built the next internet, a pioneer like Edison or Gates. If it falters, he might be seen as a dreamer who overreached, distracted by virtual worlds, while his platforms faced real-world scrutiny. His youth, founding Facebook at 19, makes his story compelling. But his wealth and power invite distrust. Will he be the architect of a utopian metaverse, or a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition? Did he connect the world or divide it? These questions linger, their answers hidden in the years ahead. As we leave this story, picture Mark in his Menlo Park office, staring at a screen, coding a future no one can yet see. His journey from a quiet kid in Dobbs Ferry to a titan shaping tomorrow defies easy judgment. The metaverse hums in the distance, AI whispers new possibilities, and billions scroll through his apps. What comes next for Mark Zuckerberg? What world will he build, and at what cost? These are the questions that echo, soft as a dream, as the screen fades to black. Hatinina anyone, Antronsi Sar.